This particular pattern is probably one of the easiest dry flies you're ever going to find yourself tying, and the best thing is that it works in the Smokies this time of year for the next several months, as little yellow stoneflies, often referred to as yellow sallies, are quite prevalent, especially in the late afternoons and evenings as the hatch comes off. Often throughout the day you can fish a yellow sally and pick up fish just because they're used to seeing them so much. Here's the materials list for this particular fly. Notice that there's not a whole lot that goes into this pattern, which is why I like it. I can whip a bunch of these out in no time at all. I'm going to be tying this one on a number 14 hook. I like to use Tiemco hooks, but any dry fly hook with a standard wire or 1X fine wire will work. You'll want to start the thread in the middle of the shank, slightly to the front of middle, and clip off your tag end of thread. And your first material is bright yellow polypropylene floating yarn. You can see here I've got a nice section, and I want to point out this right here where you can see I've already clipped a section off of this. I'm not using a full width of it. The fly will get too bulky if you're not careful. What I'm going to do for this particular one is we're going to just cut off that extra bundle there that we've got, and I'm just going to kind of feel it, and to me it still feels just a little bit bulky. This is something that will come by experience, so I'm going to pull a few of those fibers out. And if you're careful, you can set them aside and use them later. This is feeling a lot better now. We're going to use this for both the body and the wing, and obviously for the body you don't want anything too bulky. So there's my section. What I'm going to do is clip it off so I have the butt ends tapered very slightly. I'm going to start here towards the front of the fly, not all the way to the front, about at the 2/3 to 3/4 of the way towards the front mark, and I'm going to tie it all in on top of the hook. Looks like we have a moth hatch going on here. And once that's secure, I'm going to take the poly yarn. If you have a bobbin cradle, this is a good time to use it. Just keeps the thread out of the way. I'm going to take the poly yarn and I'm just going to wrap it, being very careful to gather all of the fibers as they're going to tend to want to snare on the hook point. Wrap forward to make the body of this fly. And don't get too close. I always have a bad habit of crowding the hook eye. We need to leave plenty of room for both our hackle and head. So I'm tying it off. Got the yarn here sticking out towards me. What I'm going to do now, once I've got a couple of turns in place to lock it down, is I'm going to bring it up to the top of the hook and tie it into place so it's laying back over the hook as a wing. And then I'm going to clip that. We can have it be a little long right now. We'll get it down to the length we want later if necessary. Alright, I'm going to put in a quick half hitch just to hold everything there while I get out my hackle, because we are almost done with this fly. Now, if you look carefully, you can see that the taper falls off fairly quickly here at the front. I'm going to add just a little bit of thread there so that my hackle doesn't slide off that spot. I'm going to wind back one more time, put in a half hitch, and for this particular pattern I'm using done, hackle light done actually. You can see that right there. Yellow works well for obvious reasons on this if you want an all yellow fly. I'm going to prepare the hackle by stripping just a few of the fibers off the base of the stem so I can tie it in. I'm using hackle from a Whiting 100 pack, although anything in the correct size will work just fine. And I'm going to take my hackle, I'm going to give it 1, 2, 3 good turns, bring my thread around, use 3 turns to put it in place, use a little pinch motion to stroke back the fibers, give it another 4 or 5 turns to latch everything in there. And I'm going to just finish this fly with a couple half hitches. You can do 2 things for this pattern. We can leave it like that, it'll fish amazingly well. Or we can also choose to trim the hackle on the bottom, which is what I normally do. And I'm just going to turn this upside down so I can see it well. And trim on my hackle so that this thing will ride down flush in the surface film. I'm a huge fan of parachute patterns and anything else that can get my pattern riding down in the surface film. I believe fish are looking for insects that look natural, and natural insects don't ride way up on top of the water like some of the heavily hackled patterns do. Another good variation on this pattern is to do what I would call an improved easy yellow Sally, where in addition to the polypropylene wing we add a clump of elk or deer hair. It just aids in flotation and works even better on some of the rough and tumble mountain streams where the fish don't have as much time to take a look at this pattern. But when it comes down to fish rising on fairly flat water, this particular little yellow Sally imitation will do a great job.